Hey everyone, and welcome back to Bridging the Gap. Make sure to leave a like on this video down below and subscribe. My name is Alvin. I lean right on most issues, and I'll be representing the Republican side.
My name is Luke. I lean left on most issues, and I'll be representing the Democratic side. Hey guys, in this video we have for you our final 2024 Senate predictions. Yeah, going into the general election, and yeah, we're the last couple days.
Yeah, so 2 days until Election Day, by the time you're seeing this video, and we're going to be predicting the Senate. As you can see, Republicans start with 47 seats, Democrats start with 40 solid seats, and it's a very Republican favorable map. If you look at the 2022 Senate elections, Democrats shocked the world, had 51 Senate seats, and actually gained a seat from 2020. Republicans were forced to become the minority yet again at 49. But this time around, Republicans have, like I said, a very good map, so their fortunes are likely to turn around. We're going to be going in order from what we think are the safest states for either party to the not so safe states. And I think we're going to be starting off with the state of Maryland.
Yeah, so I guess I'll just commence here with the first state. Maryland, here we have the Democrat Angela Alsobrooks running against the former governor from the state, Larry Hogan, a Republican, a more moderate Republican. He's not really aligned with the MAGA wing. Yeah, and very initially at the beginning of the cycle, the polling here looked really close, partly because also Brooks' name recognition was so low. But now, as we've progressed through the cycle, as also Brooks has increased her name recognition, she has pretty easily caught up to Larry Hogan here and has well surpassed him in the polling. Yeah, personally, like I think it's just only getting better and better for also Brooks over time. Um, so yeah, I mean, if we go to our numbers here, I would personally put this, I think I'd put this around 13 and a half for me. What do you think?
Yeah, my notes say 13.6, pretty on in line with what you say. So,
Oh, okay.
anything. I'm just gonna for the first few, I think we should just take turns and not say that much because honestly, it's not much else to say. Hogan could surprise me, but yeah, I'm just gonna move on
Okay.
because he basically noted everything, I think. So we'll go to Virginia here. Right. Yeah. Virginia's next, and Hung Kao, is trying to unseat Tim Kaine, who was famously Hillary Clinton's vice presidential pick on her losing campaign in 2016.
Hmm.
And Tim Kaine and Hung Kao, there was some rumblings of Republicans doing better in Virginia, at least when Biden was in the race.
Hmm.
But once, Harris jumped in the race, this race was basically a done deal. Kane basically became, he just surged after that point, and so did Harris. And so, in this race, I have Kane winning by 13 points, outrunning Harris by
Yeah.
quite a bit because of his incumbency.
I put it in at 12.2. Yeah, Hung Kao has just been he's been doing a lot of attacks on people he needs to win in the Nova area. Like, there's a lot of DC bureaucrats in Northern Virginia, and a good strategy is not alienating those people. So yeah, I think this is a solid blue state.
All right, go ahead on New Mexico.
Yeah, so in New Mexico, we have another Dem incumbent, Martin Heinrich, running against Nella Dominici. I believe she is the daughter of a former senator there, a former popular Republican official there. Yeah, Heinrich has been polling extremely well, and yeah, like it just seems like it's going to be in the solid range for us. He's going to win by more than double digits. Personally, I have this at an 11.5 win for Martin Heinrich. How about you?
Yeah, I have us at 12.3. I think we're starting to see a trend now of me being more optimistic for safe Democrat candidates
Hmm.
by a little bit, but I personally think that in a lot of these cases, I personally think that the Democrats are actually going to outperform the polls. Although I did move this back a little because of the Hispanic shifts in New Mexico.
Hmm.
Regardless, next state is Florida. Ooh, I get a fun one in Florida where Rick Scott is going against DMP, which I'm not going to try to pronounce. But in terms of this race, Rick Scott has been seen as a pretty solid hold for Republicans, although he is underperforming Trump in most cases. This is not going to be the level of red wave that we saw in 2022, where Marco Rubio won by double digits, big double digits, really. But I have him winning by 8.1 points. I think he's actually going to outperform the polls substantially in Florida, and we're going to see a continuation of the move right in Florida.
Yeah, I have it a little closer at 6.2.
Okay.
Uh, so I mean, yeah, I don't like his historic electoral performances aren't like the greatest. Yeah, I definitely do think this will be closer than the presidential level, but yeah. Mhm.
All right, you got our first
Oh,
flip.
oh, okay. So Montana here, we have an incumbent Democrat in John Tester, running against Tim Sheehy, the Republican. Yeah, he's like an army veteran, so that's pretty cool for him. But yeah, what's cooler for Tim Sheehy is he's developed a sizable lead in the polls against John Tester, the incumbent Democrat, despite Tester's popularity. Yeah, Sheehy has been just consistently leading. Um, yeah, that is enough alone is enough for me to be like, yeah, I think Tester is gonna follow in the footsteps of other red state Dems and kind of lose by a decent margin here. I have Sheehy winning by 7.6.
Wow, wow. I have this at 6.5. I'm not that bullish, but enough to place this just under Florida's margin. So good thing we put Montana after. Let's move
Hmm.
on to now Arizona, where Ruben Gallego has been looking like he's running away with this race, trying to fill now independent Kirsten Sinema's seat.
Hmm.
And Carrie Lake, the loser in the 2022 governor race in Arizona and former TV personality, is becoming a very stringent MAGA Republican, even refusing to concede in 2022. And I think a lot of that is going to bode well for Gallego. Even though he is a progressive, he's been able to somehow put himself more towards the middle because Kerry Lake is running against him. And that's really good for him. He's going to snatch up a lot of these Arizona independents and McCain types on the Republican side that just don't want to support Lake but are biting their tongue because they don't want to vote for Kamala Harris. So there's going to be a ton of Trump Gallego splitters here, I think.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
Arizona has shown their ability to split. We can show the 2020 race where Biden barely won, although it wasn't that big of a split. You can still look at it. And if you look at the split here, Kelly was able to hang on by a lot more than Biden. So I think it's going to be an even bigger split as the polls are indicating. And I'm going to go here with Gallego winning by a likely margin, actually.
Yeah, same. I actually am a little more bullish on
Wow.
Gallego here. I don't think Carrie Lake's running a good campaign, and Republicans are kind of triaging her, as in like not giving her a lot of money. So yeah, I do think Gallego's going to win pretty handily. Okay, yes. Next we have the state of Nevada here. Um, so okay, there's a couple stories with Nevada here. Rosen is running like very well in the polls. I'll start with that. She's doing extremely well. She's outrunning Kamala by a lot. In some polls, again, like she's outrunning her by like high single digits, which is pretty impressive, and winning independents by double digits. The only thing that I would say that's kind of looking better for Sam Brown is for Republicans in general in Nevada, so far the early vote does look pretty good. And the reason why we're looking at early vote statistics in Nevada and not other states is because Nevada is a state that votes overwhelmingly by mail and early, like something like 80% of the vote is by mail or early. Um, but despite Republicans having a slight advantage there, I think just Rosen's just doing so well with independents, and like there's so much ticket splitting in the polling at least that I'm pretty confident that she wins by a healthy margin here. I have her winning by 5.9.
Wow, that is more bullish than I have it by a lot. I have it at her winning by 4.8. I simply believe that the early voting data is going to bring this down into a lead margin and not a likely margin. I mean, we just got our last, like, another batch of mail in, and Democrats only picked up 2,000 more votes over the past night. That's really not voting well because Republicans are still leading the early vote there by like over 40,000, which Democrats have been trying to cut down under 40,000 for 2 days now. I simply think this is not that good for Rosen. But we'll put this in likely because that's our average that's been calculated here. And I guess I'll move on to Michigan, where Michigan is, a very competitive race, because the incumbent there, Debbie Stabenow, is retiring and it's leaving an open seat. Alyssa Slotkin, former House rep, or I guess she is a House rep, but now it's going to be former when she wins a Senate seat, is running against Mike Rogers on the Republican side. And Mike Rogers is at least a decent candidate on the Republican side, unlike some other candidates that we just talked about, Carrie Lake. And so Lisa Slotkin's likely going to outperform Kamala Harris in Michigan. She's running better than her, and I think it's because it's a Senate seat. It's slightly less polarizing. Some people are a little more willing to cross state like party lines for her. She's also a House rep, of course, so she has better name recognition than Mike Rogers. But Mike Rogers has been catching up in the name rec, and it's becoming somewhat close. But I still have her winning by 4.9, actually. I have Michigan being more blue than Nevada right now. Nevada.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
I do think Elisa Slotkin is definitely favored here. Yeah, she's outpulling Kamala decently well. Yeah. Mm. Okay, next we have the state of Texas here. Yeah, this is probably the okay, no. I was gonna say this is probably the most vulnerable Republican incumbent. It's close between Mr. Ted Cruz and another candidate that we'll get to shortly. But yeah, Senator Ted Cruz, you may know him from running for president back in 2016. Um, yeah, he's running to keep his Senate seat against the Democrat Colin Allred, a Democratic representative from the Dallas area. Yeah, the polling year has been pretty close, but generally, like it's as you can see, it's pretty consistently favored Cruz. Yeah, I definitely do think Cruz is the slight favorite here. Even with like Texas shifting left, especially in the suburbs, it does seem that it's not going to be shifting like as much as you like I would expect at the beginning of the year. Like the polling just looks pretty good for him. So right now I have Cruz winning by 3.2.
Okay, I have it at 3.7. Basically the same thing as you. Yeah, it would be within our little margin of error, I guess you could say.
Hmm.
But yeah, I think Ted Cruz is going to be fine. He's going to perform just in line with the polling averages, in my opinion. And honestly, I weighted it a little more for the higher quality polls like New York Times, which is why I'm closer to four than for three, same with, Marist. And I didn't
Mm.
really consider a little some of these like worse polls. So
Yep,
that's basically my reasoning.
fair
Moving
enough.
on, we have Pennsylvania here, where Bob Casey has historically been an electoral juggernaut. If you look at what's been going on with Bob Casey here, if we go back to I guess 2018 here, um, Bob Casey won by a massive margin. I know it was a blue wave year, but still, it's Pennsylvania. And Bob Casey was able to carry the state by a very, very strong margin here. And so if you look at this, on the surface, you would think that Casey would probably win by over five again. But in my opinion, when you look at the polling averages, not that big of a split from the presidential
Yeah.
level. You had McCormick, sort of trailing Trump by maybe 2, 3 points here, depending on the poll you look at. McCormick's been performing a lot better than I would think. And so overall, I still have Casey outperforming the polls, but not by that much. I have him winning by 3.7.
Yeah,
Same.
I put I put Casey up four, like four on the dot. Maybe I'll add a zero
Yeah.
here. But yeah. Yes, yeah, I do think Casey's a pretty strong incumbent, but yeah, the polls have been narrowing, but it's not, I don't think enough for him to lose. Okay, next we are at the state of Wisconsin here. Here we have another incumbent Democratic Senator, Tammy Baldwin, who performed really well in 2018 in that blue wave. She won, yeah, by double digits, 10.8 back then. She's, again, seems to be in a much closer race this time around against Republican Eric Hovde. Um, yeah, like Republicans have been putting a lot of money and focus in this race, and I think that's been seen also in the polls closening so much. She is running very, very close to Kamala. I think she's only overperforming her by like one or two now. I do happen to think she'll do, yeah, like I mean, I am pretty confident Tammy Baldwin will end up doing better than Kamala, obviously because she's an incumbent senator. Right now I have her winning the state by 3.8.
Okay. I mean, this is a race where I think we should talk about. This is the race where I think we should talk about the Des Moines poll.
Okay.
Because this dropped yesterday, that showed Harris up by 3 points in the state of Iowa. which was a shocker, obviously, to the entire political class, the entire political people on X. And this has direct translations mainly to the swing state of Wisconsin, because I think even though this poll shows D+3, I think most people still think Trump's going to win Iowa. If Kamala does win Iowa, we might have to make a new polling tier for the Seltzer poll. We might have to put it in an S tier and S would stand for Seltzer. Otherwise, I think the biggest thing is that it might shift Wisconsin to the left. And so, I was going back and forth on this. I was really between like 2.5 to 3.5. And I don't know. I still think that Hovde was one of the more higher quality recruits on the Republican side. And
Mm.
I'm going to put this just a hair under 3. I think it's going to be just a hair under 3. Baldwin could surprise me. And I mean, Democrats in this, Great Plains region as a whole could surprise me as a lot. But I think with how bad Wisconsin polling is, I'm still going to put Baldwin outperforming the polls, but I can't really see this as that big for her. But yeah, we'll just put this in lean D. I think that we can agree on that it's going to be
Yeah.
lean crowd. So,
Oh yeah, and you should also characterize Montana on the map. Because we haven't done that
right.
yet. Yeah, just
Yeah.
plop that in. There we go. Um, yes. Okay. Do you want to go into Nebraska?
Yes, I can go into Nebraska, where Deb Fisher, the incumbent, is fending off a somewhat strong independent in Dan Osborne, who has tried to link himself more to Trump, and just hoping that he gets the Democrat votes because they have no other choice in the race. And so Osborne has been looking very good. I think before the Siena poll came out, if you look at pre-Siena, every internal on either side was showing their candidate up, except for a few nonpartisan polls like Survey USA, which had this poll showing Osborne up 6. You have the Bullfinch group showing Osborne up 5, although very low sample size. But it looked very good for Osborne. And I was even maybe going to put Osborne up at some point, but I think it's somewhat reverted back to Fisher holding on. If you really just look at the high quality polls, which is just Siena and YouGov in the
Mm.
last few minutes of the cycle, I guess you could say, Fisher seems to be gonna be able to hold on, although she is gonna have to empty her bank account a little to make sure she gains the seat. I'm gonna have her winning by 2.7. Somewhat of a shocker of this being so close.
Yeah.
Iowa poll also factored into this decision as well.
Yeah, you definitely have it closer than me. I happen to think that independents don't like I don't know. I just I'm a little skeptical Osborne is gonna perform as well as the polling suggests. At the end of the day, I think I have it at 6.1 actually in favor of Fisher
Wow.
winning. Yeah, as a lot more because I think in this final stretch, like Fisher's running lots of ads with like Trump endorsing her and stuff, and I think that'll help boost her in the state. Osborne doesn't like have too much name rec. Um, and again, like I'm just remembering like prior independent runs against incumbent Republican senators, like 2022. Evan McMullen tried it with against Mike Lee. It looks somewhat close, but he still kind of ended up losing by a pretty big margin. So, yeah, I just happen to believe that this ain't it. This
I
ain't
don't
the
know. I
time.
mean, in terms of the Mike Lee Evan McMullen race, Mike Lee won by 11. But if you look, or 10 and change, but if you look at the polling average, it had Lee up by 10 and change. And so, I mean, with the polling average this close, I happen to, I mean, even in the McMullen internals, it had Lee up. And so I don't
Mm,
know. Also, Emerson obviously put, like Lee up 10. So I happen to believe this Nebraska one is a little more serious than that for sure. But I guess we'll move on.
okay.
You will finish out with
Yeah.
Ohio.
Our
Yes.
final state here. Yes, so the state of Ohio. We have another incumbent Democratic senator in a red seat, Sherrod Brown. He won it by a decent margin in 2018. He won by like 6 points. Pretty good for him. Right now, he's running against Bernie Moreno, the Republican. Not the strongest Republican. He's on the more extreme side, I would say, and he was one of the worst picks for Republicans in the state to go against. And that's why I think part of the reason I think it's so close. But yeah, I think generally Brown is still slightly favored. The polling looks pretty good for him in the state. Um, I mean, obviously he's outrunning Kamala as an incumbent senator, like who's decently popular in the red state. But I also find it interesting that, even like our pollsters, like I mean, Trafalgar notably has Brown up slightly. So I just thought that was notable to say like, oh geez, like this Republican pollster has him up. So I don't know. I do happen to think Brown is, yeah, the slight favorite here. Personally, I would put this with a tilty margin. I put Brown winning by point 0.9.
Okay, well then I think mine is gonna move this over to the lean column. I have this at round plus 1.3, and longtime viewers of this channel are gonna know that I've been bullish on Brown since the very beginning. Since 2022, actually, when I started looking at this race, I thought Brown would probably hold. And the only time that I thought Moreno would take the seat is when Biden absolutely destroyed himself on the debate stage.
Hmm.
And ever since then, I have once Kamala got switched back in, I thought, uh, Brown was probably going to win. In a fate of in some irony, Moreno sort of translates to Brown in Spanish, so they're sort of running against the same
I
thing.
I
But
actually never picked that up. Yeah.
yeah, so that's kind of funny. But yeah, so I think, like you said, Moreno was one of the weaker candidates that Republicans could have chose in the primary. If they chose like Matt Dolan, I don't know what would happen here. If they chose someone else, I don't know what would happen here. But it remains to be seen what happens in Ohio. I think Ohio is the one state where really anything can happen. I think if we look at what's going to happen here. We really don't know what's going to happen, but I think Moreno could surprise us if Trump does well in Ohio, wins the state by 8, 9, even maybe 10 if he has a really good night. You could see him drag Moreno across the finish line, but I
Mm.
mean, with that type of vote splitting that we saw in 2022, uh, if we look at this, DeWine winning by 25 points, and then in the Senate race. JD Vance only winning by 6. That is a big, big split.
Yep.
And so, especially on the Senate level, Ohioans only back Vance by 6. Although Ryan was a strong candidate, Vance was somewhat weak. I mean, if you think about it, Sherrod is very, very strong. He's an incumbent, and Moreno is weak. So I think that's a split we're going to see, especially in a more neutral year compared to 2022. So I'm going to mark it as lean Democrat, although for Luke, it would be tilt. So
Yeah.
that's sort of.
There we go. I mean, we've generally, like, in terms of like the number of seats, we have the same like 49-51 split here. So
So,
I mean that makes our grand total quite easy. 49-51 in favor of the Republicans. So they'd flip the Senate from a Democratic majority to a Republican majority ever so slightly. Yeah.
yep. So if you take a look at the map one last time, Democrats really need to somehow move Texas or, maybe get uh, 49 and a half seats if they can swing Nebraska. On the Republican side, they have a lot of targets in the Rust Belt that they are eager to get
Yep.
because the Sun Belt seems out of reach for now, at least, unless Ralston gives me a crazy prediction. Nevada, not going to look at it much on the Senate level. Republicans are going to be screaming at Ohio to move when election night comes in on the Senate level and try to somehow move, I guess, Pennsylvania and maybe Wisconsin. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see how that goes eventually. But that's it. 51 seats for the Republicans, 49 seats for the Democrats. No independent in Nebraska, although yes, independent in Vermont and Maine. So yeah, that's about it on the betting markets. Democrats have recovered to a 21% chance to win the Senate, down up from 17 before the Seltzer poll dropped. Like we said,
Mm.
although I don't really know how much that can affect the Senate because Nebraska, I don't know. Texas, I don't know. But anyways, 21% chance on the betting markets, and that is our final prediction for the Senate. So make sure to like this video down below, comment down below how many seats you think Republicans and Democrats and maybe independents will get the cycle. Um, and subscribe because our presidential election prediction is going to drop tomorrow, November 4th or 5th, whenever we decide. But we'll see what data comes in. But yeah, thanks for watching, guys, and share this video with your family and friends.
See you guys.